Hey there, www.andrewmarkmusic.com. Riffvlog on Eric Dubay's The Bible Has Hidden Meanings, which, for at a certain level, there's no argument there, but I'm going to have to preface this with a couple of things. Firstly, this cold is still kind of hanging in there, so it's a bit aggravating. I'm going to have to briefly talk about the flat Earth, which I don't believe. I don't believe the Earth is flat, although I always concede anything could be. But then it comes down to how do we know what we know in epistemology and things like that. And my primary concerns about it is an economic system that allows people to make money off of this disinformation. I mean, at that point, it's an economic system of amorality. So it's also creating a civilization of distrust. Now, in my feeling is a civilization based on cautious mistrust is probably healthy. That's somewhat kosher because we should be cautious about certain things. But when you have organized disinformation, it's creating a civilization of distrust. So I have no respect for it. Now, whether we could ask who wants the civilization of distrust, and the easy answer is the plutocratic billionaires. That they're the ones that are winning here, and they're the ones that can fund it. All they have to do is print up their phony money, and they can finance anything for as long as they want. Where did the trillions of dollars go from the Pentagon? Well, a good portion of it's gone to PSYOPs, public PSYOPs. So, okay, so this is going to be quite lengthy. I want to be fair here, because there's certain aspects where I agree with him, and I've got them written down. I'm just going to go over and check things out here, where first I agree with what he's saying in this video. And the first place I agree is on the history of what the Bible says, and it's obviously false. If we value science and archaeology and that type of knowledge, then we have to say that the history is false. It's patently false. There's no evidence that Moses even existed in the way that it's written literally. So he's some kind of allegorical myth that the rabbis throughout history have enforced literally as their cousins in Christianity and nephews in Islam have done. They've taken these mythological allegories and turned them into literal history. And Dubay is absolutely right about that, and I agree with him. Okay, so I agree with him that there is no supernaturalism on this planet right now. As far as I can see, can Eric Dubay levitate up and break the laws of physics? Please demonstrate it. I put this challenge out before in my Kundalini Science. Please, anybody that has supernatural ability, can you please demonstrate it? And it needs to be scientifically demonstrable. It needs to be, under a controlled environment. Preferably double-blind testing, repeatable, so that you can do this supernatural thing that you do repeatedly, so everybody can see it, And it's obvious that it doesn't exist. Okay, now I have a very unique take on that through my Gnostic Nephilim alternative theory, and that there very well could be 6 billion angels, archons in human form here, lying through their teeth. So we could be totally immersed in supernaturalism, and a true human being couldn't do anything about the that particular situation if the archons are in some kind of agreement not to demonstrate it for whatever reason. I've said this many times. Now, personally, I think that's probably very close to what's going on here, although the number is completely arbitrary. It could be just 6,000 of these beings that are controlling the planet. Okay, so there's no supernaturalism. Okay, so the religious literalists are again just dead wrong, and if that's what Eric Dubay is saying, I believe it is, then he's right again. Okay, so now you get into the lore of Kundalini, and Kundalini comes loaded with so much esoteric and metaphysical baggage that it's hard to know where to delineate things. Panpsychism, check, yes, I'll agree with that. Cautiously. Reincarnation, yes, I'll agree with that cautiously, but in my alternative Gnostic view, we are the reincarnation template is a part of the prison system. It's not a given there about what reincarnation is. Okay, so those are two of the primary things that come along with Kundalini, and then there's the actual, physical aspect of it. Now, what are we dealing with here? I mean, no one, as far as I know, has been able to show any empirical evidence that Kundalini is actually real. So if we assert something about something, right, and someone says that something is real and they can't demonstrate it, there's no experiment that you can do, there's no machine that can measure it, and we have sophisticated machines now, and there's nothing there. And this goes for Reiki and Chi and all of it. I mean, no matter how you want to name it, there's nothing there at this point in time. Now, it's not to say that it doesn't exist. I mean, sure, at one point we didn't think, electromagnetism was real. But it's sort of a false equivalency because we have so much technology now that if something was real in that regard, interacting with physicality in the material universe, by now I suggest we should have been able to have some proof of it, some measurements. Okay, so what are we saying here that it is then? Is it just some kind of psychological process that's interacting with our physicality, with the 33 degrees of the spinal columns? Okay. I can buy that. I can buy that it's just a purely physical, psychological, physiological phenomenon. All right. Now, as far as the claims of meditation, let me just check this. Okay, I'll just finish that thought. As far as how Kundalini morphs into meditative claims, does meditation have, efficacy for the human body mind? Yes. I mean, we've proven that there's benefits. It's beneficial to meditate. I'm an amateur meditator for 20 years. A long time contemplative, over 40 years. There's no question, but let's look at the claims of the meditative practices, especially as how they relate to enlightenment. Okay, so in Mahayana Buddhism, enlightenment means there's no God. In Advaita Vedanta, enlightenment means you're God. In Dvaita Vedanta, the school that I tend to agree with the most, it means that God is totally separate and distinct from this existence. And this is also congruent with my Gnostic beliefs. But the primary point being is that there's no consensus of what meditation is, as far as metaphysics. Have I experienced non-duality and this voidness? Yes. But am I going to declare, cosmology from that experience? No. No, that's complete overreach. And this is where I, draw lines with Buddhism. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a minefield of sort of all kinds of different fallacies and assertions that are overshoot and overreach. I now another place I would agree with him is where he's suggesting, and I think he's suggesting, that there are a group of literalists who have controlled the planet. And it looks to me that certainly a group within Judaism is aligned with groups within Christianity, which are aligned within groups within Islam, and probably, Hinduism too, who actually are, promoting this mythology, this falseness, with an end game of bringing in a Jewish Messiah. This is insane. This is insane that this, and look, I believe 100% this group exists, and they have incredible influence. In a way, that is a war between religion, mythological religion, and modernity. So, I think that war is very much real, and where I would disagree with people like Steven Pinker and Shermer is that was the group who was responsible for 9/11. And as much as I respect Shermer and appreciate Pinker's intellect, in my opinion, they're just dead wrong on that. And anyway, I don't want to get too far off here. But I think that that cabal is incredibly sophisticated and organized, and I've suggested that they've even implemented a whole financial system, because I mean, if that literalist version is correct as far as being they're real, then they didn't give up just because of Darwin. I mean, they just changed tactics, and not only do they control all literalist religion, but they've also turned it into a worldwide system of money. Okay, so yeah, now we'll get into some places where I disagree. It doesn't really prove anything about God. It doesn't tell us what God is. And that even goes, even if the earth were flat, it doesn't tell us anything about God and why God is allowing an incredible amount of lying and deceit to happen, and seemingly impotent to stop the lying. Not to mention, I've brought up the point many times that God couldn't even, no matter what religion God was speaking through, he couldn't tell the difference. He couldn't make clear the difference between a pancake and a basketball, whether he was speaking in Aramaic, Hebrew, or anything else. Otherwise, I mean, that's a fact. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. It would just be clear as day that the earth is flat in every religion on the world, and there would be no argument about it. No science could prove that wrong. So, Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, yeah, I've already touched on that there's no empirical evidence. There's only anecdotal evidence for the Kundalini, and anecdotal evidence, no matter how individually compelling, I have my own anecdotal evidence, but I have the ability, probably because of the amount of entheogens that I did, to step out of my own worldview and go, I could be wrong. So I think I'm one of the few people on the planet who has been able to step back from their biases, and attachments. Maybe that's why God likes me. Okay, so I already touched on the Aveda Dveda distinctions. Now, my own feeling here, as a Gnostic, is Eric Dubay is framing this Kundalini thing opposed to the literalist. But from one Gnostic view, it could all be the deception of the demiurge. So if the demiurge is a being of just inherent falseness, then it explains why everything on this planet is contradictory, and nobody can come to a consensus about anything because it's inherently false and corrupt. So it's not a given when you put these two things together. It could be a false dichotomy. It could be just another tactic of divide and conquer of the demiurge strategy on this planet. Okay. What else do I hear? Yeah, I think the biggest issue to me is if even we can see that Kundalini is real, the kind of the Luciferian attachment to it, that somehow you're God because of it, is so problematic that it's hard to even begin to deconstruct that. Now, the first place I would attempt to is to say, okay, for the word God to have any meaningful intelligence attached to it, there needs to be certain attributes that a God would be able to demonstrate and look at. I already pointed out that there's no supernaturalism here, and there's certainly no humans doing anything supernatural. Ergo, we are not God. And even if this Kundalini story is true, the claims that we are God are almost meaningless. Okay, like I'm sorry to get rude here, but I don't know how many tons of human shit gets created on this planet every day. That seems very ungodly to me, for gods to have to create that much excrement, So if we're gods because of Kundalini, it just doesn't mean much to me. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somehow it's significant. I'm just not seeing the significance. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I've covered. I went through my list. I hope that it's a reasonable deconstruction of what he's saying. I think I've been respectful. Say, okay, I agree with you here. I disagree with you there, and yeah, I mean, I guess the final thing is addressing those few individuals who have experienced that narrative literally and are just the most decent and kind human beings you'd ever want to come across. I think that one of the guys in the video was like that. I do not have a problem with you whatsoever. Okay, it's just that you cannot empirically demonstrate anything that you've experienced. So it's beneficial to you, it's beneficial to society, but there's a lot of things are, I mean, okay, well, I'll just leave it at that. www.andrewmarkmusic.com on Eric Dubay's Bible Allegory video, and some thoughts on it. Peace out, peace the fuck out. Desire